Howdy, howdy. Rusty Nelson here, the old Rusty Professor, working on vlog 23 today. So I've been taking a few notes, noting the things that have kind of come up in the last couple of weeks since the one big and my biggest video that I think I was checking. It's now like at 124,000 views. That's incredible. And it was about Loomis, which has got me thinking all sorts of things about what I should be doing and can be doing on my channel, not only with watercolor, but also doing more with some drawing figures, drawing people. It seems to be a topic that people are interested in and want to know how to do. And I think I can definitely work with both and tie them together. I do it all the time in my classes up at the university. So just hopefully preparing people for the amount of work and effort and practice that they're going to have to go through to really get good at drawing and understanding how to render a pose and a person in a scene, or just doing a study of a figure. So I'm definitely going to be keeping it on a PG rating thing. So no nudes, no naked people in the videos. But I do, and I have taught a lot of figure drawing classes where it is with nude models, and I've had a couple comments about the experience that other people have had when they have had. I remember doing my first nude model class in college, and not so much being shocked with the fact there was a naked person in the room, but more in the fact that I realized at that point in that class that I really didn't know how to draw people, and I had no foundation. And the frustrating thing for me back then was that, and this is like late 70s, early 80s when I took this class, that there really wasn't a good foundation for drawing the figure provided in that class, other than going in and doing fast, loose gesture drawings and hoping that your hand and eye coordination and your measuring and your judgment on proportions all grew at the pace of practice, right? So it was a long time, and it was probably not until I started teaching figure drawing that I did come to realize there was a process, and there are steps and stages and rules to follow that will yield a good foundation for a drawing that you're going to do. I've been working as an instructor to develop those skills and learn the method, and the one I have been working with is Loomis. I do watch and see a lot of other techniques, and a lot of digital artists, comic book artists and things like that, and showing their techniques and processes on constructing the figure. And they're really good, and it leads to a point where you really don't need a model. If you've drawn enough live figures or drawing from photography and things like that over time you'll develop a vocabulary, and you'll understand what the forms do in whatever angle, as long as you can construct and get that structure established that you can then layer the form on top of. So that's what I have dropping this week in my channel, are a couple of Loomis method sketching. I think Monday I dropped a tutorial on just doing and adding the mass and the form to a Loomis mannequin. So you should have been practicing the mannequin for about a week, and then I just dropped the one where we're starting to add the form and the mass onto the stick figure. So later on this week I'll be dropping an initial sketch on watercolor paper of a little tighter rendering of a pose that I'm going to set up and prep for a watercolor, which will drop in a second episode of that lesson. So sketching first, doing the Loomis method, get a sketch onto watercolor paper, and then we'll we'll throw some color on it, tie it all back into the whole the whole notion and point and purpose of my channel. Initially was about watercolor. It's something I really love doing, but I will say I do love figure drawing as well, and being able to construct a figure. I know there's drawing a figure, drawing people. There's so many rabbit holes to go down with that. It's either drawing the faces in different angles and or the poses, trying to catch a pose, an action pose, a static pose, getting the weight and the directions of the body just right. That's what I've been working on just recently. But also, I see this all the time with my students in my figure drawing class, or even my watercolor class when I do my figure component in my watercolor class, that hands and feet are always something that students will avoid. They'll walk around in the classroom looking for an angle on the figure where the hands aren't seen, or maybe the feet, or they'll draw it in a way that the feet go off the edge of the paper and stuff. So they're really just focused on the big shapes, the torso, the thighs, the calves, and things like that, and avoid the hands, the feet, and even the faces. They'll draw a gorgeous looking figure. They'll have all the proportions right, but they'll just leave the face blank, and or the hands as mittens. That's kind of the standard avoidance that students will typically try to avoid and not work with to any great extent. So that, I think, is that's a whole series of tutorials that I'll be doing as well. So I'll break things down. I'll do another portrait and maybe do another watercolor version of a portrait. I'm working real hard for right now, trying to get my figure and my faces tuned back up. Like I said, I haven't taught figure drawing for about a year and a half, and I'm a bit out of practice. I haven't been doing this every day like you should if you're really serious about doing people and a lot of figures all the time. I've got too many rabbit holes that I like going down. I love to try to get the landscapes figured out, because one, I always sucked at landscapes, and it takes me a while to get tuned up with landscapes. And I've noticed that with my YouTube channel, with all the previous topics and simple exercises and things that I've posted throughout the course of this last 9 months, I have gotten a little rusty on my landscapes too. So they're not as fresh and as convincing or confident as I like a landscape to look. So the best landscapes are those ones that are simple, quick, decisive actions, and you maybe scrub in just a little bit for textures and this and that. Man, right now I'm struggling with trying to keep that nice and loose and free too, because I've had to do a couple landscapes, or I was trying to shoot a couple landscapes that I could post. One was a piece that my wife has asked me to do for a family friend, which was a sunrise, and I'm not a real big sunrise landscape artist, so I've been having to practice that a couple times. I've scrapped 2 or 3 of those videos and said, nope, I'm going to have to practice on this a little bit before I come back into it. So don't feel, just as a beginner, when you're having some failures, don't worry, it happens to everybody. Anything you're seeing on my channel, I've either said, oh, screw it, this is as good as it's going to get. It'll be good for a lesson, because it's not artwork. But every now and then I'll have a nice little piece. And I haven't really had, and when I'm teaching my figure drawing class or my watercolor class, every now and then the clouds will part, and that demo that I'm doing, it turns out, it's like, damn, that turned out, how'd I do that in just 30 minutes and things like that. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with trying to get the landscapes up to speed, get my Loomis up to speed, get my figures, my faces, and get everything all tuned up, dialed in, so that I can provide some nice looking tutorials for you. I'm really, again, not worried about creating artwork. I'm just trying to give you some artwork that is a nice result of the process that I'm trying to demonstrate. So if it happens to turn out looking pretty good as artwork, great, that's okay, but that's not the main intent. The intent is the lesson I'm trying to get through. And I said this time and time again, I know that anybody who you're watching, any of the watercolor artists, any of the figure drawing artists, the digital artists, whatever, we all can make it look so much easier than it is. And the only secret to the sauce is that you've got to sit down and dedicate the time to it, that you've got to practice, or it won't get better. You'll understand it. You can see it when somebody's doing it, but doing it yourself, that's a required amount of practice and a development of a hand-eye coordination and a sensitivity to the mark, to the action that you're trying to do, knowing and juggling all those rules that come into play, directional mark making, cross contour mark making, hatching, shading, the tonal range in the colors, your saturation, you're juggling so many things. It's a complex series of decisions you have to make as you go along for the end result to turn out. So when you finally get all of those things kind of juggling, and it's not that you have to juggle all of them. Sometimes you prioritize certain things that you're wanting to accomplish and let that take the lead and let the other things take a back seat to those original decisions, like limiting a color palette, right? Just keeping it to one or two colors and dropping that in and see what that does. See if you can control that before you start dropping in more and more complex decisions that you have to make. So it's definitely critical thinking on steroids, and everything has to fall into place just right, or you have to know how to react to, adjust, or fix anything that doesn't go right. So don't get frustrated. It's going to happen to you. It happens to me all the time. I'm a professor and I'm still dealing with that. The biggest problem with being a professor is, I love the fact that I've been able to make a career my entire life doing creative things, either as an advertising graphic designer for 15 years and an art director and all of that stuff, and then moving into higher education, becoming a professor, teaching creativity and what it is that I have to break down and show to students as to the steps and the processes that will give them success in when their skills are developing. But it's always been a thing that it's a small amount of time that I get to actually spend creating. And I remember especially when I was a department chair, I had no time outside of class for doing anything creative. So I started doing any of the things I wanted to do creatively in class with my students. And that's where I really kind of developed the idea that, and I know I always appreciated seeing somebody who knew how to do stuff. I always appreciated watching them and seeing how their artwork developed and the steps and the processes. So I started doing that in class. I know I've had fellow colleagues, professors that would never do that in class with the students because they felt like they were showing off. But I always liked seeing that. And I always wanted to try modeling that when I was department chair, mainly because it gave me a creative outlet. Because outside of class, I didn't have any, I'm pushing paperwork, right? Dealing with everybody's problems, the students, the administration, whatever the problem was, it was nothing creative. So if I had to have some sort of a creative outlet, more than just being something on the weekend that I could maybe somehow cobble together, I started doing it in class, and it started evolving into something that I loved doing and I could do quickly as well, especially with the watercolor and the drawing. The figure drawing is an art form that is fairly quick, and you learn a spontaneity in doing it when you have to do it within a certain time frame. So anyway, that's where I'm at this week. I'm going to do more Loomis. I'm switching up I'm probably going to stop doing as many shorts and start doing more tutorials. I kind of have my buckets of like a Loomis bucket where I'll do a series of tutorials getting deeper and deeper into the faces, figures, hands, feet, and clothing. That's a whole other, those are all the rabbit holes for Loomis and figure drawing that you're you're going to experience and want to know more about. And then I'm going to be doing more and more of my watercolors. And again, with my watercolors, it's going to be more of a bucket of some lessons and tutorials that you'll need to practice, like I'm doing with Loomis. And then I'm going to be doing some things that are really just kind of oriented around. I again still need to have some sort of a creative outlet. So I'm trying to figure out how those are going to work in the schedule. So right now I'm shifting up my schedule a little bit, and I started posting, and this is just in response to that one big Loomis, because it posted early on a Friday. So I'm going to try posting early on Fridays for a while. Maybe dropping something on a Saturday. We'll see. It depends if I can do something quick and drop it on a Saturday. I'll drop maybe a Loomis tutorial on Mondays, of course my vlog on Wednesdays, and maybe watercolor on Fridays, something like that. I'm still mixing it up, so if it's a little chaotic right now, it's not what I've typically been doing for the last 6 to 8 months. That's why I'm kind of rejiggering my buckets and figuring out what's going to go into them and when. So, hey, I've been yakking now for over 15 minutes. If you've gotten any value out of this crazy talk, let me know. Drop me a comment and give me a like and a subscribe. And I'll see you next week talking watercolor.